Hi, I'm Gavin. I haven't done one of these for a while, so I thought I'd sort of jump back in and do them again. So what we're going to look at today is this. If it comes into focus, there it is. It's not an analog camera, it's a digital, it's a video camera. It's the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. Now, for those of you who've like shoot video and all those kind of things, Blackmagic is a huge, tons of cameras out there that you can shoot with. They started with the pocket camera and the production cameras, there's little cinema cameras years ago. They become immensely popular because of the price point, really. That's what we look at. I won't go super into depth of this camera because I'm sure you can find all the specs online and everything. But I mean, I've shot with one of these, shot with all their cameras over the years. I'm just going to point out a few problems with them and a few sort of things to look out for. Because I mean, the landscape's changed quite dramatically. These days, you've got such powerful small cameras out on the market that can do certain things. These do have some benefits, but I think when you look at it in retrospect, not as much as you think. But it's interesting. These are still available. I think they're £1,200, and then you can go up to a 6K, a 6K G2, a 6K Prime. And they've just released a full frame camera that also does 6K. But one of the big things about the Blackmagics always was that they can shoot RAW. Well, they used to be able to shoot Cinema DNG, which was basically you can go back into the material, you can adjust your white balance contrast, white balance, ISO, and all this kind of stuff, and you've got more control in post production, much akin to the higher end cinema cameras. Things like Reds and Arri with the codecs and all that. So, big selling point for young cinematographers. You can go back and you can do the post-production workflow. But one of the key things is Blackmagic also makes one of the most industry standard color grading tools on the planet, which is called DaVinci Resolve. So you get DaVinci Resolve, you've got your Cinema DNGs, and then you sort of can go all the way. It's an editing platform as well. So yeah, so you can see that they've sort of built a bit of an ecosystem where you get a camera, and with every camera you get a license of DaVinci Resolve, and then you can color grade and do that sort of stuff. I don't suppose the package would be as powerful if these cameras only shot ProRes or one of those things, because you can't in post production you can't quite do as much. So if you think they've built quite a clever ecosystem, I mean, so very quickly, I mean, all these pocket cameras are very similar designs. It's like a polycarbonate body with a side grip, and then it's got a viewing screen on the back that you control. They did something very, very smart with these as well. They built their own OS from the ground up to operate them. And if you look at all the types of OSs you can get on cameras, I think it's like Red, who had to create their own, who had no history in cameras beforehand. Their operating system's quite simple. Arri's quite simple to use, and Blackmagic OS, the way you operate, do settings, dead simple. One of the simplest ones ever. If you look at like Sony and Canon, I mean, Sony's menu systems and stuff is just like absolutely crazy. That's because they come from a photography background, if you think about it. So they're shoehorning what they think you want into a menu system. Same with Canon, and it's Panasonic's similar. They've got tons of menus, not very intuitive, I don't think. But Blackmagic OS on these cameras is literally the simplest operating system on the planet to use to do what you need to do. And we'll have a quick look at it in a bit. Anyway, back to the camera. I mean, the original one, this one here, it comes with a micro 4/3 mount, which is quite popular. It means that you've got a cropped sensor. I think the crop's about 2. So if you can imagine, this has got a 14mm lens on it. I put a 14mm lumix on it. That's basically equivalent field of view to a 28mm lens. It sort of doubles it. So if you put a 28 on it, it doubles it again. Now that's handy, sort of, but you can imagine that's a 14mm lens. So down at the wide end, if I wanted to have a 14mm wide, I'd need an 8mm lens to go on here to get that. So Micro Four Thirds is a great platform, smaller sensor, but it is difficult with wide angle lenses down the bottom. I mean, obviously going the other way, it's really, really simple. But I think they went down that road because it was sort of Micro Four Thirds was sort of seemed to be a good place to be at the time when they released it. Obviously now they've just released a full frame camera because full frame's all the rage. Now, so what you can do with it, I mean, The spec wise, it does everything you need. 4K, DCI, 25 frames a second up to 50 or 60. So you've got a bit of slow-mo on there. It's got all the ports you need. You've got mic, headphones, HDMI out. Now, on all these cameras, the HDMI, all the cinema cameras, these ones that are designed like this, huge limitation. You can't pump out the 4K. You can only get HD out of these HDMIs and get them out. And so these would be great. These ones would be great for certain purposes, especially like web streaming, stuff like that. But you have to, I think you have to jump up to their other type of camera to get the 4K out of the HDMI. And also, if you did want to say come out of this and not use B-RAW, we'll talk about that in a minute. And say you wanted to put this into an Atmos recorder or something, and there's a big kerfuffle between Atmos and Blackmagic, you can only get an HD signal, so you can't use a separate recorder unit to do any recordings with it. So then you've got a power supply unit, a USB out, and an audio out. Now, okay, so talk about recording with these cameras. So Cinema DNG, as I mentioned at the beginning, was the preferred platform, but obviously Cinema DNG is a compressed platform, compressed codec. And the big problem is Red own the patent to compressed codecs. So you really, after a bit of time, you'll get caught by Red, and they'll want to do some deal with you, like they must have done with Canon for their raw light, or they must have done it with the OCN on the Sony cameras. So Blackmagic a bit stuck. So what they had to do, you can't use Cinema DNG because I think the ruling is anything over like 13 frames a second or something crazy, and it's uncompressed or compressed in a camera, belongs to Red. So all the cameras originally came out with Cinema DNG. I'm sure the Red lawyers caught up with them and went, you pay us some money, do something or other. But Blackmagic very cleverly, because they're quite a resourceful company, created their own raw type of format. It's called B-RAW. But that doesn't quite do, it's not like a Red file. It's sort of debayed, partially debayed, which is partially developed, and then you can still tweak it in post. So it's sort of like a halfway house between a Cinema DNG or an R3D file and an XAVC file. So you've got more control over it in post. So all their cameras have this B-RAW, and they removed the ability on, I believe on these, I think this one first came with the DNGs. They removed the ability to record Cinema DNG. Some people still hold out and they've got Cinema DNG capability. All the earlier cameras, like the production camera, the 4K production camera, used to do Cinema DNGs. That was a great camera. There was a 4K production camera they did. It was like a box shape, and that had a really good sensor, and that made some great images. And you used to just like literally slam an SSD in the side of it, and you could record. So okay, so you've got ProRes on here as well. So you've got B-RAW and ProRes. You could record to either two formats. So on the side here, I'm not going to probably, there's a port, and you could put a CF card in or an SD card. And these SD cards, you can record a certain amount, but it's a bit dodgy. And obviously CF cards are expensive. So Blackmagic did something very, very clever. On the side here, there's a USB-C port. And what it allowed you to do is literally, if I can get one, literally find one here somewhere. I haven't got the cable. You'd get basically get a USB-C hard drive, plug it straight in the side, and you can record to it. And obviously you need to mount it on the camera somehow. But yeah, so you can put 1 terabyte fast enough SSD and record to it. Now that's a real benefit, because obviously 1 terabyte SSD isn't hugely expensive. And you can basically just keep buying those, and then you can record these massive B-RAW files. So you've got your semi-compressed RAW file, compressed RAW, and you can then do it in post. So that was a really big selling point for the sort of starter router cinematography type world, because you've got massive power from this camera. You can record these files, and then you've got cheap available media. At the time, I think Red had proprietary cards that you had to put in, which were stupidly expensive in their cameras. And other manufacturers, the CF cards were very, very expensive for fast ones, and they weren't that large. I think they were 256 gig, but you could get a 1 terabyte SSD for, I don't know, 150 quid, and it would do the trick. So, okay, so the big benefit of the camera was you've got, you can record the B-RAW, you can record the ProRes, you can record to external recorders. However, it looks great like this in its like naked format, but really to to make it work properly, you have to build the camera out. So here's where it starts to get a bit tricky. The batteries on these things, which are these, probably last about 30 minutes, which is useless. So you immediately, when you get one of these, have to seek an alternate power supply system. And the only way to do it is to put a cage on it. So you put a cage on it, then you can get the big block batteries and mount those. You can put, what are they called? You can build the old, what are they called? I can't remember what they're called. The big block ones on there. It'll come to me in a minute. But obviously, I mean, you've got your LCD and your control screens at the back. So ergonomically, you're already stuck as to where you can put things. You can't put anything over this because you can't operate the camera. So now you've got like a cage. You've got a top handle. You've now got to mount your SSD if you shoot into that onto the side. So these things start to build out in size, and they become quite chunky. And then, so they sort of lose. I mean, like this, it's wonderful, isn't it? It's like a cinema. It's like a normal photography camera. But they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And you have to add, and you have to buy, and you have to spend money and put things on them. And then there's the other part. Very simple thing these days. Most of the sort of, even the simple Fuji cameras that do video now have very powerful autofocus. So I'm shooting this on a C70. And the C70 there is tracking my eyes, my face. I don't have to do anything. It's like keeping everything in focus for me to do the job. These don't have like continuous autofocus. They have very basic autofocus. I think it's face detection. You press a button and it focuses. You press it and it focuses. Now, obviously, if you're a single shooter, this is a bit problematic. If you're trying to keep focus with this camera, you don't really want to use your focus. You're back to manual. Now, I know everybody goes, "Oh, manual focus, amazing. It's the greatest thing on the planet." But sometimes, like this situation where you're blogging, which is huge, it's not really the best way to do it. So today, this camera really is outgunned by literally everything to do with autofocus and other cameras. Even the baby Sonys have got great autofocus. They may not shoot RAW, but you can always get past this by buying an Atmos and recording ProRes RAW to an external recorder, and you still get all that autofocus functionality. But yeah, so I mean, it's an oddity nowadays, this camera. It's sort of, they've got 4 in the range. They've got, as I mentioned at the beginning. But I don't know if it really holds its own anymore. I mean, audio-wise as well, we've got one on this one. We've got one XLR. The bigger ones have 2 XLRs. They're mini XLRs that go in. That's fine. And you've got, I think you can get 2 channels of audio in, I think, through the mic. No, you can probably get 2 channels of audio into this. For the mini XLR port here at the side. And then you've got a microphone thing at the top. But yeah, it's a tricky one, this. The 1,200 quid, I mean, it's one of those things where if you spend a bit more money, you could get something a little bit more, I think, a bit more robust. I mean, I'm not a fan of them, but I mean, at the end of the day, the Sony FX3s and things like that these days and even the FX30, I mean, they're amazing autofocus, low light capability. And just to jump onto that, most cameras have a base ISO. C70 has a base ISO of 800. These have 2 ISOs. They have basically more circuitry cuts in at a higher level and resets the noise floor. So with this, it's 400 and 3200. Now, that sounds great, but if you look at something like a Sony that has, 12,800 as a second noise floor, that's crazy. So, I mean, you could shoot like candlelight with that thing, with those things. So yeah, that's great, but it is a bit of a, I don't know if these days it quite adds up. I think I'm going to have a look at some point their new full frame camera, but yeah, I don't know. I think maybe, I'll come back actually. We'll have a quick look at the OS on this, and then and what it does, and talk you through some bits of it, and then I'll come back with some closing thoughts. Okay, so here we go. Here we've got the top-down view of a Blackmagic Cinema Camera 4K. It's got 2 strap holders over here. It's got an attachment thing on the top there, a cold shoe type thing. You can do what you like with it. On-off button. Then you've got these function buttons you can program. Your front, you've got an ISO button, which when you press down, there's a wheel here that you can adjust. You've got white balance. Well, I wonder what S is. I can't remember. Anyway, and then you've got shutter. There you go. Remember. Then you've got a single button here where you can press and take stills. You've got a record button, and then if you tip it forward, you've got a record button there as well. So that's literally the front, the top of the camera. And then at the back, you've got this gigantic, if it focuses, can it go in focus? Looks like it's having focus issues. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn it on. That might give it something to focus on. There you go. That's worked. Oh, maybe not. Look at it, it's hunting. Yeah, it's reflections off the screen. So let's give it tilt it down a bit. That's better. Right, so you can see there, I've fired up the camera with the top switch. And basically across here you've got frames per second, shutter speed, iris, time code, ISO, you've got white balance, tint, battery thing, the battery level. If you hit that button there, it takes you to the main menu. Close that, there's another way, we'll get to that in a second. Across the bottom you've got histogram, and you've got these three little bars here, which actually show you if you're clipping any of the red or green channel. Record on, and then it tells you where your media is coming from. Currently I've got a card, a small card in, what's it called? Not in, that's the CF slot, that one there is the SD card slot, and that's the drive. Then you've got audio meters here. So, okay, so that's basically that part. Over here, if you tap that corner button, this gives you the guides you can have. Okay, all the guides and framing across. There we go. Crosshairs, thirds. There, and then you've got zebras, things like that. Get rid of that one. And let's have a look in the menu. So if I hit this button here, this will bring up the menu. So you've got record, monitor, audio setup, preset slots, and you've got the two different codecs you can record in, Blackmagic RAW or ProRes. And here you've got constant bitrate and constant quality. I'm not going to go into depth about what that means. It basically is to do with how it's recorded and the amount of detail that goes in. But you've got these levels, 3.1, 5, 8, 12. The ratios here, so obviously 12 is more heavily compressed than 3.1. I've only ever used 5.1, I've used 3.1, and I've always left it on constant bitrate, and it's been fine. And then at the bottom here, you've got all the resolutions. So if I go to 4K DCI, I've got 4K 2.1 anamorphic, UHD, which is probably easier because you don't have that stupid thing where you get the black bar stuff on bottom when you're editing. Anamorphic, all the way down to HD. So now, obviously, some of these lower down ones are windowing the sensor. So we'll show you that in a second. So if I put this on HD, switch to tab left, sensor area is 4K. Just see it up there? You can see it says 4K. If I flip it back, put that to DCI, flip back, I'm still doing sensor, it'll crop it, let's do that. 2K anamorphic, sensor area 2K anamorphic, it tells you how much of the sensor is actually using. That one, 16. And then, yeah, so let's try put it to ProRes. So ProRes, 4K DCI, Ultra HD, flip it over there, 4K sensor area. So, oops, yeah, bit tricky, here we go, let's get back to the beginning. So with this, obviously with ProRes, you've got all the flavours, 8 apart from 444. HQ, 422, LT and proxy. Let's flip it back to that, HD. Let's see. Yeah, so that's the one, this is what I'm trying to show you. If you do HD with this camera, it actually uses the 4K and scrunches it down to give you a better HD image for the ProRes. There we go. Right, so back to that. So then if you see I've been flipping backwards and forwards on these screens, if you go to here, you've got dynamic range. So film is log, extended video is 709. But I mean, obviously, if you shoot the B-roll, it doesn't really matter because you can fiddle around with this afterwards in post-production. If you shoot ProRes, it does. So if you put it in the video, it'll put the lot over the top of it, and then basically it, or you get extended video. Preferred recording media down the bottom, project frame rate, off-speed recording. So if I want to set up to flick to do some slow-mo, okay, so my off-speed is 60, I wouldn't do that. Put it to 50. Now when I punch the HFR button over here, it will now flip between 25 frames per second and 50 frames a second. Now the thing, obviously you remember when you jump every single time you do a slow motion iteration, you just lose a stop of light. So you'll see it'll go darker one stop when I jump to 50, to something to be aware of. And so then you can flip again over here, time lapse, detail sharpening. This is for ProRes. What happens if the card does something? Apply the LUT in file. Yeah, that's to stop you. You can apply the LUT. I think that works with B-roll. You can apply the LUT so it appears over the top. I never do that. I leave everything off, and I never shoot ProRes. Okay, vertical recording. So yeah, so clever thing with this camera, because for the vertical world, you can just turn it and all the controls flip over. And then you've got back to the beginning. Monitoring, LCD and HDMI. So this is what we're seeing on our camera with LCD. HDMI is what gets sent out the HDMI feed. So if we switch that frame guide, if you turn that off, that gives you a clean feed out. Yeah, clean feed, there we go. HDMI, clean feed on. So this shuts off everything. So if you wanted to record, you did want to record a clean feed out, you can do it that way. LCD, back to that. One more over. What have we got there? Status text on. Basically, anamorphic de-squeeze. What goes on the displays. Zebra levels. These are your focus peaking red colour, so you can choose the focus peaking colour. Like either coloured lines or peaking for focus assisting. One more over. What have we got now? Frame guides, grids, horizons, crosshairs, dots, all the stuff you need to. Whoa. So hopefully we can pick up from where I was with this, because the battery died. It's a classic Blackmagic moment, because up here, and I'll show you this doesn't really, it says 58%. Some of the batteries you get for this, it doesn't actually indicate properly what you're going to get, so it just falls off. I've had that happen loads of times. Anyway, where was it? I think I've got up to monitors and all that, so let's do audio. You've got multiple different types of audio feeds you can get into the camera. Mono mic, none, the camera says inbuilt speakers, all these kind of things. XLR in, phantom power if you need to power it up. Then there's one more slider over here, headphones volume, different audio levels, peak meters and all this sort of business, speaker volume if you want one for playback, anything else there. Then setup, then date and time, English, shutter angle, or you want shutter speed. Who would want shutter speed? It's all angles, man. 50 Hertz, because obviously you don't want flicker. Lens stabilization on if the lens has got it. Drop frame time code, interesting to use that. Go over that one. Set up your function buttons. Now, this is what you can do. You can set the function buttons on the top of these things. I've got false color. That's what's on number 2. I've got display LUT. Then number 3, frame guide. So if either one of these 3 that you hit, you'll basically toggle on functions. But you can see down the bottom here, you can change that. So if I can change focus assist, false color, zebras, grid, safe area guides, off-speed recording, you can move these around. So these are programmable at the top here. Okay, over here we've got tally light. If you want a tally light on, sorry, keep getting a bit of glare on this. LED brightness, hardware, software version, playback, all clips, Bluetooth, because you control these with Bluetooth, reset camera, calibrate image sensor, calibrate screen, calibrate motion sensor. Now, one of the interesting things you can do with these now, I believe this one's got it in, is it does remember motion data, so you can do some form of stabilization in Resolve with what comes off the camera. It's not brilliant, but it's better than nothing, and that's that. So presets, you can build in a preset so that when you reboot the camera, you can just load up a certain thing. LUTs, all your different LUTs you can load in there that you want to use. And that's basically it. Okay, that's the operating system. You can see it's like super simple operating system. It's not really, it says if you try and do that with a Sony camera, you're going to cry, because I mean their menu systems are like pretty terrible. Anyway, so that's everything on the camera. You can talk about these buttons here. Playback, this button here gets you into the menu system. Magnification, HFR, high frame rate, and then you've got one of these is auto iris, which you never really want to do, and then you've got the auto focus. And that's a quick whiz around the camera. At the bottom you've got like a plug-in for the battery thing that's really annoying, that always, as we've seen already in this video, has failed. And that's fundamentally it. What's anything on the front for you? Got some mics, speakers. Yeah, and that's it. That's the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. So there you go. That's a quick whiz around the Blackmagic operating system. You see, it's really easy to use, isn't it? It's like crazy simple, and it has got a lot of functionality built into this camera. But yeah, I mean, as I was sort of starting to say, I don't know. I mean, the later versions have got flip screens and they've tried to do more, but I'm not sure about this shape. it sounded great at the beginning because they've sort of tried to emulate a camera, but I think box cameras are much more useful these days, like the Reds, the Komodos, and even the C70's got a much more useful shape. And FX6 is square. I think people build their cameras out or don't build their cameras out. I mean, with a C70 like that, you can literally put the top handle on it and a lens and shoot, and you don't have any problems. With this, you sort of, you've even got a nice side grip on a C70, and you can do things with it. I mean, even with the Red, it's very, very simple just to attach a top handle and go. You've got everything there built in. But I think the ergonomics of this is really weird now. I used to think it was really cool. I think it's really weird. I think it's difficult to hold it. With a box camera, it's much more centralized. You can do things with it. But I think with this, it's becoming it's not quite as useful. And bright sunlight, the screen gets wiped out, so you need to separately monitor anyway, which is what you would do with a box shaped camera. I mean, I'm hoping Blackmagic do bring out a box camera. It's probably going to be their best, the best way forward for them. But yeah, these are great cameras. They are, don't get me wrong. But I think they've had this design especially has had its time. And I think that they could design it better. I think they could look for better autofocus capability to match up with everything else. I think B-RAW is great. I think, the picture out of these things is brilliant, but they're a bit of faff. They're a faff camera. You have to build the whole thing out, different batteries, all these kind of things to get it to be really, really usable. And I know you have to do this with other box cameras, but not so much. I mean, take a Komodo, you can pop a top handle on, slam in those batteries at the back, and the lens on the front, and you're really good to go. And the batteries that you'd get by default with that camera do last quite a while. The inbuilt battery on this is 30 minutes, so you end up with carrying around hundreds of these things if you want to shoot it in this kind of a lightweight situation. So yeah, so that's the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K camera. I think it's good. I think it's had its time though, and I think that they can do better. Anyway, thanks for watching.